So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Empowering the Hero in Your Journey by Jenna, Moniz, and the Chris Walsh Center. I am Therese Acton Roberts, the Center Coordinator for the Chris Walsh Center, and I'm joined here by Natalie McCollum, our graduate student for the center, and of course, Jenna. Before we begin, I'll read the Chris Walsh Center mission statement, then make a few announcements and provide you some information about how tonight's event is going to run. Our mission. The Chris Walsh Center is here to serve the community by providing information for families and educators about a continuum of educational supports available to students with disabilities, students who are gifted, and students with unmet needs. The center offers support, workshops, and other programming for family, educators, student support professionals, administrators, and advocates in Massachusetts. The center also conducts in scholarly research and provides educators preparation and professional development. We are able to offer you this talk without cost to you, thanks to a generous grant from the Sudbury Foundation. Much of the work we do is funded from grants. For this reason, and so we can continue to meet the needs of local families, it's incredibly important that we get your feedback on events we offer. As such, later in this event, Jenna will provide you with time to fill out a short survey so we can learn from your feedback and continue to offer more enriching events. Now for a few announcements. If you are an educator and would like to attend the next two events in the Power of Resilience and Social Emotional Learning for Educator series, Mindful Resiliency and SEL for Thriving Educators will take place on Thursday, November 1st, 2024 at 4 p.m. In Resiliency and Embroidered Educators will take place on December 12th at 4 p.m. We will provide you the links in our chat for registration for those events. Finally, our caregiver support group will have its second of 4 meetings on November 21st at 7 p.m. These links will also be sent in an email tomorrow, so please don't feel like you need to click away from Jenna's event to register. Now, for some details about how tonight's event will run. Jenna has done a wonderful job designing an event that will be experiential, so your questions and comments and interactions are welcomed and encouraged. If you would like to speak during the event, please feel free to raise your hand feature and you'll be invited to do so. Otherwise, if you prefer to type your questions or comments, please type them in the chat and Natalie will read them for Jenna to answer and engage with. Importantly, this event is being recorded and will be posted to the Chris Walsh YouTube channel. So if it may benefit caregivers who weren't able to join us tonight. If you do not want to appear in the video but want to share, please use the chat feature. Having your camera on will not result in you being part of the video. Only speaking out loud becomes part of the recording. Let's move on to tonight's main event, Empowering the Hero in Your Journey. Jenna's 30-year career in education began as an instructor during her undergraduate studies at Howard University and continued as a teacher in South America and Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer. Excuse me. Her life work has been centered around developing healthy, happy, and young people who are supported by adults and communities that foster actualization of the individual who contributes to unique gifts to the betterment of their community. Jenna's graduate studies in cognitive science, as well as a various of certificates in well-being, include the National Board of Teaching Standards, Center for Mind-Body Medicine, Yale's Science of Wellbeing, Quantum Learning Network, Neurochange Solutions, and HeartMath. have helped to shape her work with organizations and individuals from all walks of life. In her work for the country's sixth largest school district, she taught, created district and state curriculum for students and educators, facilitated professional development, and led various divisions, as well as created mindfulness and SEL supports for school communities and shareholders. Jenna launched Aspire Academy, an accelerated therapeutic high school option for teens throughout the state. She now works globally with school communities as well as professional artists, activists, and athletes, building individual and collective well-being and team coherence for ultimate performance. In her role with the school system, Jenna has led many teams to be successful and meet their goals, to create work environments where team members thrive and contribute their gifts towards team outcomes. Jenna's understanding of connectivity and importance of well-being at the core of the leadership level informs her work with organizations, women in leadership, and young people from communities near and far. Jenna is a mother, sister, and daughter who is passionate about her calling as an educator, writer, coach, and activist. Her life work is centered around developing happy young people who are supported by adults and communities that nurture self-actualized individuals and who are confident using their voice to create lives they love. Now I turn it over to Jenna.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Therese. I certainly appreciate that. Quite the intro. Had I known the bio would have been read, I would have shortened it. But thank you very much. And thanks to the women who have joined us this evening. It seems like so far we're a group of women, and love to have a conversation, especially in these very changing days, about how we can be in community and support one another. This conversation is exactly about that, is about well-being, taking care of ourselves first and foremost for our physiological health, but also how we connect with one another and how we create the lives that we want to live. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so that you can see some images that I've pulled together for this evening. So hopefully you can all see my screen here. As Therese very nicely shared about me, my work in education has been many years, and there's a really soft space in my heart for teenagers. I still work with teenagers on what we call a hero's healing journey. So tonight's conversation, whether you're a parent, whether you are an educator, or just a woman in leadership, showing up these days really calls upon and invites us to draw on our own hero qualities. So I'll explain more about what that means to me. This night is about you in conversation. And while you're asked to keep your cameras off, I do invite you to, at any point, jump in, open up your mic, type in the chat anything that you'd like to ask. Some of these concepts may be new, maybe not. I always invite my audience to be, the folks that I talk to, students that I talk to always question, always find your own research, to be your own fact checker, if you will. Some of these concepts on coherence and energy fields, et cetera, may be new to you. So I do invite you at any point to ask questions or to do your own research on the side. So I like to start off when I talk with young people by just showing them a picture of this. Obviously, we know what this is. This is the human brain. But then I ask a follow-up question. My graduate studies are in brain-based instructions specifically, so cognitive science, thinking about thinking. And the years that I spent studying the brain led me more and more to understanding where the information comes from that we use in terms of our intellectual intelligence. So this is the human brain. And just wondering if you know, not yet checking on your cell phones, but just, no quiz here. This is just for fun. How many pounds, if you know, how many pounds does the human brain weigh? So I invite you to type a number in the chat or just shout it out to yourself, unmute yourself if you'd like, or you can just, say it to yourself. So how many pounds does the human brain weigh? Think to yourself for a moment. Oh, we've got some chat convo. 8 pounds, 8 pounds, 10 pounds, 10 pounds. Good guess. Good guesses. And again, these are not for any kind of test. The human brain actually weighs right around 3 pounds. Okay. And so, yep, 3 pounds. And so, to probably what you're looking at here inside of the brain, we have lots and lots and lots of these things. What are these called? What do we call these little things that you see here that we've got lots of in the brain? And at this point, some of my students or young people or adults would have shouted out, these are neurons. They're exactly that. So then how many neurons do we have in the human brain? And this is where I invite you to be my fact checker. Do we have 10,000 neurons in the brain? Do we have 100,000 neurons in the human brain? Do we have 1,000,000 neurons in the human brain? 10 million, 20 million? The answer is actually billions, hundreds of billions of neurons in the human brain. And you're absolutely right. We have the capacity or the ability to connect or have synaptic connections to equal trillions of these connections. So by far the capacity, in my opinion, far smarter than any kind of artificial intelligence could ever equal. This is always evolving. If you look, the numbers are always changing. The capacity of over 1 trillion connections, and these neural connections signify what we learn, what we see, what we experience. Every time we experience something that means something to us, we make a neural connection. So the human brain is absolutely fascinating. Now, a little bit lower than the human brain, this is a picture, obviously, of the human heart, right? And so, again, in all of my studies of neuroscience and the brain, we only focused peripherally on the heart. But what I've come to understand in my work, not only with the HeartMath Institute, not only with NeuroChange Solutions, but understanding the power of the heart and the role that the heart plays. For example, did you know that in a fetus, the heart not only develops first, but it develops and begins beating before the brain even forms. So the heart develops first. And in the communication between the heart and the brain, which is, for simplicity's sake, your autonomic nervous system, your nervous system, in the communication between the heart and the brain, it's actually the heart that does most of the talking. Somewhere between 80 to 85% of the conversation between the heart and the brain actually stems from the heart. The heart is far more powerful electromagnetically than the brain. In fact, if you put your hands right outside of the brain, just about here, right outside of your skull, this is just about as far, about an inch or so, as far as we can measure the electromagnetic energy outside of your brain. But outside of your heart, we can measure 3 feet and beyond, far beyond. We'll talk much more about that in a moment. So the heart is not only the first organ that develops and starts beating, it's far more powerful than the brain, measurably. And the heart, as we know now, sends far more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. The heart, in fact, is a neurological network unto itself. So it has short and long-term memory of its own, independent of the brain in your head. That makes it a brain of its own. It's conscious and it is aware and it has long and short-term memory. The HeartMath Institute, which has over 500 peer-reviewed articles on heart rate variability and the communication of the heart, calls the heart the little brain. I call the heart the first brain. And so what we say in this field of communication of the heart and the brain is that the language of the brain is thoughts, right? Thoughts are the language of the brain, and emotions are the language of the heart. So why do emotions matter? For lots of reasons that we'll talk about, but I invite you now on your cell phones, your devices, just to take a moment and look up the top 10 employability skills, top 10 workforce skills, or top 10 employability skills. What are employers looking for in new hires? Top 10 employability skills. And feel free, give you a moment to do that. As you're finding a list of the top 10, just take a look at how many of those skills out of the 10 are actually intellectual intelligence or emotional intelligence. How many of those qualities are based in heart-centered skills? And so feel free to type in the chat what you find. Some, the majority, all of them, only a couple. But what I find when I look up, whether it's Forbes or any other search into the workforce skills, the employability skills, is that the vast majority of these skills are actually based in emotional intelligence. How well we communicate with one another, how well we connect, how well we can problem solve, how well we can work on teams, etc. Skills that are based primarily in emotional intelligence as opposed to the amount of information we can store in the brain. To boot, when we think about what constitutes resilience, what helps us to stay resilient in the world, especially in these days of increased stress and uncertainty, because it's often the uncertainty that can be stressful for us, not knowing what's coming, not knowing what's ahead. And certainly we're in these days now when we don't know exactly what's going to happen with our futures, right? A big part of the pandemic and the stress around the pandemic was just the uncertainty, just not knowing what to expect. And so what we know is that in the domains of resilience, it is absolutely, unequivocally our emotional domain that is the biggest factor, the biggest role in our resilience and how well we deal with stress. So all of this business of leaving our emotions at the door and making decisions with our heads and not our hearts. And for sure, if you're a parent or an educator or a grandmother, a mother, an aunt who is around young people, telling young people to brush off their emotions, to shake it off, that their emotions are not important, is the farthest thing from the truth that then we can tell them. I like to tell kids that their emotions are superpowers. I also find this to be absolutely true, and we'll talk about the science of that as well. What you're looking at here is, this comes from the Yale University's School of Emotional Intelligence out of their medical school, and this is called a mood meter. And on this mood meter, if you just take a look, this grid is divided into 4 quadrants. This grid actually comes from an evolution of the HeartMath Institute's grid of depletion to renewal. So I'll flip back to that screen in just a moment where you're able to see laid out various emotions into 4 different quadrants. Again, HeartMath Institute's grid or matrix on renewing emotions versus depleting emotions. On the left-hand side of the chart, you see emotions that deplete to your energy system, deplete the body's physiological energy system, versus emotions on the right-hand side that replenish or renew, regenerate the body's energetic system. On the top side, or the top of the grid, on the top of the chart, are high energy emotions. So these are emotions that get your sympathetic nervous system involved. And on the bottom are more the renewing, relaxation, parasympathetic activities or emotions associated with the parasympathetic nervous system. As you can see, all the way to the left are examples of biohormones, right? We've got cortisol as one example of a biohormone, and this is one of the emotions or biochemicals that we talk about often, or that you'll see often. Cortisol, adrenal, that's certainly not the only one. These are biochemicals that are associated with our depleting emotions that over time, if fired and wired, thinking back on those neural synaptic connections, if fired and wired over time, turn into have physiological impacts. The reverse is true as well. So all the way over to the right-hand side of the chart, you see DHEA, which is one of the biohormones that signify that are associated with replenishment, with vitality, with longevity, with a strong immune system. So it's one, but not the only one. The idea here is that at any given time, our bodies are sending out a cascade of biochemicals. Over 1,400 biochemicals at any given moment are pouring from your brain is commanding the rest of your body to make biochemicals at any given moment. And those biochemicals are either signified or either signature of replenishment, vitality and renewal, or depletion. Now, I'm certainly not saying that any emotion or even the biochemicals therein are bad or negative. In fact, we need cortisol, we need adrenaline to wake up in the morning and to move, to walk up a set of stairs. However, if again, fired and wired chronically over time, where an emotion turns into a mood turns into a personality over and over again, this will ultimately lead to dis-ease. Now, here's the thing. It's one thing if we're aware of the emotions that we're feeling, right? Something traumatic happens or something big happens, even something small happens, and we're aware we have an emotion that may be depleting. That's fine. We have it, it moves on. What tends to happen, though, is that we harbor or feel emotions over time that then lie below our awareness level. We're not even aware that we're feeling these feelings. So irritation, impatience, worry, angst, these kinds of low-lying emotions that we may become not even aware of. Whether or not we're aware of them, they're having an impact on our bodies. So the important thing is that we are first and foremost aware of what we're feeling. So just take a moment here and think about what you think you typically feel on any given day. And obviously emotions change. They change throughout the day. They change within the hour. They can change within, a few minutes. Your emotions can change. They are energy in motion. But what emotions do you tend to feel, or rather, what quadrant do you think that and you don't have to respond to this is more of a reflective question. What quadrant do you think that your emotions tend to lie in? Do you find that you're high energy on the upper energy side of the grid, depleting or replenishing, or lower energy, depleting or replenishing? Again, none of this stays forever. Your emotions are always changing. But again, if they become chronic and you find that, or you don't know that it's that angst, it's that impatience, it's that sitting in traffic that gets you annoyed, it's the annoyed feelings that you're not even aware that you're feeling, this is something that we want to pay attention to, because we can measure these emotions. Emotions are measurable. And this is what we measure with heart rate variability. So again, the HeartMath Institute, who has been studying heart rate variability or the communication of the heart for over 30 years now, uses technology called small magnetometers that are able to measure the communication from your heart. And what you're looking at here is a very coherent, what we would call a coherent communication from the heart. So this person in this moment, and this is a real snapshot of one of my clients that I was measuring. This is a real-time snapshot or depiction of the communication from the heart. We can tell by the quality of this wave. Everything is vibration, right? Everything is energy. So your emotions are also energy that are measurable. We can tell by the quality of this wave that the heart is sending signals to the brain that are coherent. Now, what does coherent mean? When you hear the word coherent, what do you think of? Well, as an English teacher, former English teacher, when I hear the word coherent, I think of communication. I think of something or someone that is conveying a message clearly. And that's exactly what this is, or what this means. We all emit electromagnetic frequency, right? Everything, a cell phone, a television, a radio, emits electromagnetic frequency. And just like a telephone just like a radio, just like a television, when you have a clear, coherent signal from the transmitter to the receiver, this is what the wave will look like. You can almost see how communication can move clearly versus a wave like this. This is also a real snapshot of a real person. And the quality of the wave here is very different from what we looked at before. Sometimes people say when they look at a wave like this that it looks like chaos. It looks like jagged edges. It looks like a frequency that has inconsistency or chaos. You can really think of this as when you've got a bad signal on a cell phone. It's the same exact thing when you have incoherence in your communication line, when there's static in the communication line. So just like a television that has got static. So literally what this means is that your brain is not able to hear your heart clearly. So that makes sense then when we're a little bit nervous or stressed, why it's more difficult to do like a math problem, right? Try to do a math problem when you're upset or you're angry. This is exactly what happens. You can't think clearly because of the communication or the incoherence between the brain and the heart. Most accidents happen when we're feeling emotions that are depleting or incoherent. The good news is we can change our emotional state in a matter of moments from incoherence to coherence, right? And so this is it's a depiction, but this is a real time snap of someone who, by way of the communication in their brains and their hearts, is able to switch from a place of frustration into appreciation. And that's exactly what the communication changes look like in the heart, from static or incoherence into more smooth rolling hill quality waves where your brain can hear your heart. And we do that by a couple of simple steps. I invite you to join with me as we practice what the Heart Math Institute would call heart-focused breathing. Nothing new under the sun, right? Lots of ways to get to the heart, lots of ways to get to the brain. But the first step in heart-focused breathing is to focus your attention on your heart. Why? Because it's not just the breathing that makes the difference. The breathing helps, but it's really what we are focused on. This really is about where your attention is going. Because wherever your attention is going, your body's going to match it with its emotion. So if you're focusing on your heart, you're no longer focused on the external world. You're focused on yourself. And you're actually energizing your heart as you focus on it. The second step is simple. Just remember to breathe, right? And that sometimes requires a reminder, because when we get nervous, when we get stressed out, we breathe more shallowly. We hold our breath. We tend not to breathe deeply. So the second step is to remember to breathe. Now, the third step is where our consciousness really gets involved. It's really being aware of what you're thinking about, because an emotion derives from a thought, which turns into a feedback loop of thought and matching emotion. And then your body matches the emotion with another similar thought. And so then your body matches that thought with the biochemicals, those hormones, those biochemicals that match that thought. So it really is becoming very aware of that thought emotion feedback loop or pattern, getting in there. And if you need to interrupt it, interrupt it. So sometimes if I'm nervous or if there's something that is bothering me, I will literally think of myself being in nature, or I'll think of myself with my pet, or I'll think of myself with my nieces, depending on the emotion that I want to feel. And it's the feeling that matters most. It's not just thinking about something. You need to match it with the feeling. So honing in on that feeling, because the more that you feel that same feeling, the more neural pathways you're laying down that look like that feeling, which means it's easier to come back to that same emotion, which means you're pruning or dewiring the neural networks of stress and rewiring the networks of well-being. This is just a snapshot of your brain, different brain waves. We won't get into that. We don't have time to get into the brain waves as much, but the point here is that it is absolutely the rhythm of your heart that works like a springboard, a drum, if you will, that will entrain the rest of your body, the rest of your organs, including your brain waves. So the way to calm or get clarity in the brain and to get into a place of creativity, to get into a place of flow, to get into a place where you're creating and not in survival, to get out of high beta and into what we would call an alpha state, a more creative state, it's going to come from your heart, because your heart serves like the drum. It's the springboard that entrains the rest of your organs, starting with your brain. One of my teachers likes to say, the mind thinks, but the heart knows. And not to read over this list, I'll let you just take a look at it, but why emotions matter. Not because it's anything philosophical or just be nice to the kids or be nice to yourself. They matter because they are the number one factor in your physiological well-being, how well you connect with others, and how well you're able to create and connect with what we would call your intuition. Your emotions matter far more than we've been told, right? So don't leave those emotions at the door. Bring them in. They really, truly are our superpowers. And again, emotions are energy. Everything is energy. And now we can measure emotions by way of that biofeedback. Emotions are what one of my teachers calls energy in motion. And literally, each emotion has its own signature, its own frequency. And frequency is how many times something cycles per second or per minute. So emotions that are depleting, remember on that Yale chart on the left-hand side of the grid, those emotions that are depleting will have a lower frequency, literally a lower vibration, more dense, more matter-like. They're heavier. Versus emotions that are regenerating, renewing, replenishing, are literally a higher frequency. And heart rate variability, again, is the language that we use to, a simple way to say it is your heart rhythm. So it's not your heart rate. We're not talking about how many times your heart beats per minute. We're talking about its rhythm, its pattern, really the spaces between each heartbeat, because your heart does not beat like a metronome. It has different lengths of time, milliseconds, between each beat. And collectively, over time, that pattern creates a rhythm. And that rhythm is heart rate variability. And bottom line, the more variability that your heart rhythm has, the more adaptability it has. So the more HRV or adaptability you has, that means the more resilience you have to stress. So we work with athletes, we work with first responders, the military, veterans, educators, performers. And what we're working on with them is increasing their coherence, increasing their heart rate variability. So it's not always parasympathetic activity. This is not always about finding calm and ease or turning the lights off and lighting a candle and et cetera, and incense. Go for it. Those things are all great. But we're also talking about eyes open in the world, functioning day to day, high sympathetic activity, meaning if I'm an athlete, I'm running. I could be. If I'm a first responder, I may be a firefighter going into a burning building. If I'm a veteran, etc. So these are real case scenarios, high stress situations where we work with our clients to help them increase their heart rate variability or the adaptability of their heart pattern. It means the threshold that we have for stress increases. And that is by laying down that pattern over and over again. When you lay down those neural networks, remember, we have the capacity over 1 trillion connections. And the more neural pathways you lay down that lay the signature of well-being, of ease, of rest, even courage, high energy. Think about an athlete who needs to run. High sympathetic activity, high heart rate, but emotional state of well-being. The more that you fire and wire those emotions, the more you change your baseline, meaning your normal set point, that quadrant where you are, you'll usually fall on the right-hand side. And this we know equals more well-being, longevity, stronger immune system, and again, the ability to create in your world with more ease. what Albert Einstein would have called from energy to matter. And one of the many brilliant things that Albert Einstein says is energy is everything, there's nothing else to it. One of my good friends who's on here loves that quote, energy is everything, it's true. And so paying attention, we can't make any changes or any shifts unless we're aware of what's happening. And again, so many of our emotions that we feel and so many of the thoughts that are part of that feedback loop, we've fired and wired for so many years, maybe 5 years, maybe decades. And now they've just kind of become a part of this subconscious feedback loop that we're not even aware of. So it behooves us to really become aware of what we're thinking and what we're feeling, because those two things, our thoughts and our emotions, are inextricably connected. We only have a feeling because we've had a certain thought. And so in this day and age of so many changes, of so much shift, I want to shift into this conversation about heroes and who our heroes are and how we can become and be more and more of our own heroes. Um, Goodness knows, especially now, we're going to have to count and rely on ourselves more, as opposed to relying on any kinds of systems to be the driving force of our well-being, of creating the lives that we want. I'll take a pause here. Feel free, if you'd like to chat anything in the chat that we've talked about so far, if there's anything that you're questioning or want to talk about more in depth, if you want to unmute yourself and jump in and ask any questions or say anything, please feel free to at this point. And if not, we'll move forward into hero qualities. So then what I'd ask of you is to think about, consider who some of your own personal heroes are. So just take a moment to think about a couple of people, maybe 2 or 3 people who you consider to be your heroes. And these could be people who are alive, who have since passed, who are famous or were famous, or everyday people, real or imaginary. Who are some of your heroes? Your mom. Me too. Natalie, thank you. And so when you think about these people that you're naming, some of your heroes, what are the qualities that you associate with them? So then it would, be like, what are the qualities, Natalie, of your mom and everyone else? What are the qualities that you really admire in your hero? And in front of you is just an adapted list, an abridged list of heart qualities or values shared by another one of my brilliant teachers who you may or may not know, Brene Brown, who's a professor out of the University of Houston and a researcher in emotions. And on this list of heart qualities or values, silently just kind of circle or identify a couple of those qualities, maybe 5 qualities that you hold dear. What are these qualities that you see or saw in your hero that you really appreciate and admire and aspire to? Beautiful. My grandmother, some of my teachers, absolutely. And now I invite you to, in the chat, type in a couple of these qualities that are really important to you that you would put at the top of your list of heart qualities or values. So as you're thinking about some of those values or heart qualities, feel free to type them in the chat. Making a difference, courage, commitment, gratitude. And we bring these up for two reasons, really: empathy, courage, wholeheartedness, creative, inclusive. Thank you. Beautiful. Investment in others, leadership. I bring these up for two reasons: authenticity, caring, nature as well. Not only for our own striving toward becoming more and more, demonstrating more and more the values or qualities of your heroes, for sure. Absolutely. That's part of our evolution and ongoing work: gratitude, courage, compassion, truth, honesty. But also as an awareness piece that if these are your values, if these are your heart qualities that you hold dear, it's important to be aware in your daily life, in your career, in your relationships, in your your friendships, in your connections, and the way that you move through the world. It's important to be aware that one of the biggest sources of that incoherence that we were talking about is when your values or heart qualities don't match or line up with the values or heart qualities of the environment that you're in. So I'll say that in a different way: spirituality, compassion, kindness, vulnerability, joy. Beautiful. I'll say that in a different way. One other additional way that you can think of coherence, and let me just speak for a moment about coherence. We talked about coherence being clear communication between the heart and the brain, right? Scientifically, the word coherence in physics means that there's order. There's things are working well together, both within the system and throughout the system. There's harmony, in other words, there's harmony within the system. And so when we talk about the coherence of the human being, right, because humans are meaning-making creatures. We're a combination of our thoughts and our emotions. You can kind of think of your thoughts and emotions. If we were a computer, it would be your operating system. It's like who you are. And so when there's a lack of alignment in the operating system between your thoughts or your emotions, how you think and how you feel and how you speak and how you act, that is inherently incoherence. Additionally, if you're in the world and your environment does not line up with your values, your coherence, that is inherently a source of incoherence within your system. That stresses your nervous system. It's a stress to your system. Loyalty, pride, family, compassion, love, gratitude, absolutely. And so if these are values that you hold dear, and in your environment or in your larger world, you're asked to coexist in that world where these values are not honored or not demonstrated, then automatically there's going to be what we would call incoherence. If there's a lack of alignment between your thoughts, emotions, the way that you speak and the way that you show up, and your environment. So again, these values, to me, this is just really important to know, just to identify, because I'll never forget when I realized, this is why I don't like to work in this situation, in this environment, because my heart qualities and values don't line up to the heart qualities and values in the situation. So then at least I knew. Then at least I was aware of what was happening, and then from there I could make changes. So knowing your values, understanding your heart qualities is both about our evolution and growth, but also an awareness of the kinds of environments we put ourselves in. Yes, my dear friend is understanding. She knows, because sometimes it's about changing your environment. Sometimes it's about changing the situation. And now, you know, if you're thinking the same thing that I'm thinking right now, how do you change your environment when, some things have happened in your country that are out of alignment with your values? What I can say is this, that no matter the good news about understanding this science and understanding the power of the interplay between your thoughts and emotions is really truly understanding both theoretically, philosophically, but much more experientially, much more in your everyday livelihood. Understanding and grounding into the fact that your emotions derive internally. No one else can command you to feel a certain way, no matter what's happening in the outside world. You are in management of your thoughts and your emotions. Now, I know that may feel like a tough pill to swallow, but with all of the changes, not just politically, with climate change, with everything that we're living and growing and evolving through, to me, this is the most important concept that we can teach to young people, because for young people, their world is their relationships. And this one said this and likes me and includes, to know and to really own and get better and better at the mastery, if you will, of your thought and emotion interplay. What you will learn immediately is that you are the executive director. You are the creator, the writer, the director, the actor, the editor in this story that you call your life. No one else has that ability to be the hero in your own journey. You are that. And so, no matter who does what, or who gets elected, or what happens in the world, and even with the environment and climate change, etc., you and only you, me and only me, is I am the only one that is able to write my own story. And so it's really empowering to just know that, and to teach young people that they are in control is not a word that I like to use, but they are in management. They are the executive director of their thoughts and emotions, not the social media, not the cell phone, not media, not television, not entertainment. You and you alone get to write your story. And so, how do we build on this concept of coherence? How do we grow what we know, heart rate variability and well-being? Again, I lean on one of my old teachers, all of our teachers. Play is the highest form of research is another quote by Albert Einstein. And I'll lean on the theory from Howard Gardner out of Harvard University, and on multiple intelligences. Play is the highest form of research. And I won't read these to you. You can see them on the screen here, but finding ways regularly to schedule in what I would call play, well-being into your daily schedule, your weekly schedule regularly, so that you're doing the things that you love to do that are healthy and that raise that vibration, because these are measurable emotions, from even neutral to more joy, that bring you joy, that grow literally your energetic field. So whether it's connecting with people by writing, by dancing, by listening to music, creating music, getting out into nature, by making art, enjoying art, things that are healthy for you, that make you feel replenished and renewed and regenerated and joy. These are the things that shouldn't be just held off for vacation, but rather scheduled into your regular daily routine. Another way of plotting this out, my beautiful sister helped to create some of these images here. Visuals are not my strong suit. I'm much more of a kinesthetic person. So for me, I know I have to schedule in time to exercise. If I don't, I'm not going to feel as well. We're all different. We all have all of these capabilities and capacities, but finding the things that you love to do and doing more of them regularly will increase your heart rate variability, will extend your life, will increase your joy, and will increase your energy field. And I'll wrap up just by saying, connect to nature, because nature, as we know, has healing properties. Doctors in Japan write scripts literally for their patients to go forest bathing. Get out into nature if you can. We're a part of nature. We see these shapes everywhere in nature. We see them in our body. We're all a part of nature. If you have the opportunity to get into nature, do so. Ground, get out and walk. hug a tree, right, Regina? Get out literally and touch nature, feel nature, be a part of nature. The healing resonant frequency of nature will do you good. And if you don't have the opportunity to get out into nature for whatever reason, just remember the mind doesn't know the difference. Meaning the mind doesn't know the difference between a scenario that you're in real life versus what you've created by thought alone. So again, when I'm nervous or feeling depleted or stressed, I think of myself being in nature. Why? Because the mind doesn't know the difference. It's going to have the same physiological, biochemical impact as if I were physically in nature. And this is just a picture, half fingerprint, half tree stump. So just to remind us that we all are part of nature. Regina, you'll like this picture. We are all trees, right? We're a part of nature. Get out into nature if you can. This teeny tiny sphere in the middle of this picture here this is a real photograph. I know it's a little blurry, but this is a real photograph taken by NASA. And the image in the middle of that this photograph is of a planet. It's actually our planet. That's planet Earth. This is a real photograph from NASA. And what you see outside of the Earth are the same kinds of energy fields that each one of us has individually. We're all connected. We're a part of nature. We're connected to one another. So social connections, getting out with people that make you feel good, that also are doing things that are healthy for them, are one of the best things that we can do for ourselves right now is to connect socially, connect interpersonally, and becoming more and more the hero in our own journey, knowing that we are the sovereign proprietors. We're the writers, the directors, the actors. We are the editors. We get to write the next chapters of this life of ours, no matter where we are in life, no matter how old we are. We get to say how we feel and what we do with the rest of our days. So I hope that feels empowering to you. It feels empowering to me, especially amidst all of the changes and what feels like chaos right now, knowing that I get to create my own life and the chapters that are ahead of me. And the more that I get out and do the things that make me feel good, the more that I'm aware of my thought and emotional interplay and patterns, the more I'm able to get in there and say, nope, that's not the thought that you want right now, right? So when I start beating myself up thinking, oh, you're not good at this, I'm able to be aware of it, get in there and say, yet maybe I can try it differently. And little by little, that interplay, that feedback loop changes into something different because we're literally firing and wiring and laying down new neural networks in our brains of what we do want to see created in our worlds, what we do want to, for lack of better words, manifest or create in our worlds. Has everything to do with the feedback loop of our thoughts and emotions, because the circumstances, the situations in life are going to show up that match what we're thinking and what we're feeling. It just is physics. So I will end with that. I know we are close to the top of the hour and it's late for lots of us. And I know that we've got some announcements to make about what's coming up and some events that are on the horizon. Should I stop sharing?
Um, yes, please. Thank you, Jenna. That was very powerful. I'd like to invite Natalie to take a minute right now, and we're going to put a survey in the link. So before people drop off, I want you to be able to take this survey again. We really bring Jenna to you for free because of the grant from um, the Sudbury Foundation. Also, I invite you to raise your hand if you want to ask Jenna a question or to type it in the chat and Natalie will ask it to Jenna. One question I had, Jenna, I think I've been working on this now for the past 6 weeks, really thinking about how my thoughts is empowering my mood. It's something that's newer to me. But I know that children are triggered with this. I'm struggling to do it myself. How do I break it down to do it with my child?
Great question. Thank you, Therese. Often when we talk to young people, we talk about emotions, even in terms of weather. So, a child may say that I'm feeling cloudy right now, I'm feeling really stormy. And again, just as a reminder, no emotions are good or bad, right? They move, they change. And the idea is that, what we call the refractory period, the length of time that you're feeling an emotion, we have management over. So it's okay to be upset. It's okay to have big feelings, right? It's okay to be, angry. How long are you going to be angry? Then becomes the next question. I've heard you. I'm validating it. I'm not saying you're wrong, but how long do you want to stay angry? Knowing all of the effects of what our emotions have. Uh, First and foremost, we can't think clearly when we're, feeling dysregulated. So if you want to be able to think clearly and be able to communicate clearly, maybe, take a couple of breaths. And the thing is, we all have our own ways and strategies for regulating our systems. It's not going to be the same for everyone. For some children, they need to move. They literally need to walk around, to pace, to move, to bounce. For other children, it may be listening to music, hearing something, holding something, touch. That wheel of multiple intelligences includes all of those. It encompasses all of them, from your kinesthetic to your, musical, to your writing, giving children the option and the tools to find out what works for them. At some point, they might want to write it out. Or they might want to make a piece of music about it. They might just want to listen to music, or maybe they need to get outside and run or move. But offering them different tools so that they become aware of, okay, I know for me, when I get upset, taking a walk outside really helps. So let me just walk around the house and come back before I talk to mom. So really becoming the master, if you will, of first and foremost being aware, I'm feeling this. This is what I'm feeling right now. So even, having more conversations around the vernacular, the vocabulary of emotions. Our emotional vocabulary tends to be so limited, right? Usually when you ask a child or an adult how they're feeling, they're gonna default to 5 or 6 words. I'm good, I'm fine, I'm well. And there are a lot of nuances, a lot of ambiguity to emotions, and you can absolutely feel more than one emotion at a time. So, giving them vocabulary to be able to name what they're feeling, and then the tools to be able to regulate them, and especially in times when they need them, especially when they're in that red zone.
Thank you. Um, did we have any questions come in, Natalie? No. Does anybody want to come off of mute and ask Jenna a question?
I know a couple of folks in the group, so I think they probably know what I would say.
Okay, so we have no more questions for Jenna. I have some reminders here. I want to thank Jenna for an enriching evening, and thank you all for your engagement in empowering the hero in your journey. I just want to take a moment to remind you of some upcoming events. The Power of Resiliency and Social Emotional Learning for Education series has 2 sessions coming up. One, mindfulness, resilience, and social emotional thriving for educators will take place on November 21st at 4 p.m. And resiliency in the embodied educator will take place on December 12th at 4 p.m. We'll provide you the links in an email tomorrow. We provided you the links in the chat, and we can add them again. Also, our fall 2024 caregiver support group will have its second of 4 meetings Thursday, November 21st. If you couldn't attend the first one, that's okay. You can still come to the support group. It's at 7 o'clock. And again, you just need to register. Thank you again for taking the time to join us tonight. Your participation in these events and your effort that you make to use this information to support yourself and your family is what makes our work meaningful. We recognize your dedication to your family and yourselves, and we can't make a positive impact without you. Thank you for being here, and I hope you all have a good night. And please don't forget to fill out the surveys, they're really important to us. With that, I'd like to say good night, and I hope to see you guys again at a future event.
Thanks so much. Good night.